Good morning. So ASTS got a deal with Verizon, it looks like, this morning. And Rocket Lab signed an extension on some more launches for another company. So very, very impressive stuff. $84. Unbelievable. Unbelievable kind of move. Good morning, guys. Good morning. So I'm not in ASTS, but I am in Rocket Lab. And these big base breakouts, like even this one, I didn't think was absolutely perfect, but on this day here, it looked great. Just a clean little pullback to the 50, held it a handful of days in a row, and then a big push out on heavy volume the next day, $52. I mean, this is the kind of setup you want to keep your eye out for. And then obviously a small little, somewhat of a flat base breakout, and then, off to the races. WWD looks ready to go. Too thin for me. No, it's not too thin for me. This thing trades $140 million. It's too slow for me, right? This thing trading 2.36%. That's the part that's no fun, right? That's already kind of a turtle. Yeah, I think Palantir looks pretty good, right? We've already seen, I'm not going to make too much of this down day, because if you look back, we've seen it here, and we've seen it here, and we've seen it here. So Palantir does these kind of down days, and then we've seen this down day where then it gaps up, prints an inside day, and then just kind of continues higher. So literally exactly what's going on here. Gap down, print an inside day, and then, try to grind higher. We'll see. What action do I want to see on Tesla to possibly add more? Well, coincidentally, I took off my my shares that I ended up buying on 10-3. So the action I don't want to see is it losing 10-3's low and losing the 20 simple moving average. I mean, maybe it does, and then I can reevaluate. But to add more, just hang out above $425 and go sideways for the next week, and then I'll figure it out. Okay, so it kind of depends, right? Strata, you're asking a great question. So if the SPY and QQQ is going down and a stock is going up through a pivot buy point, do I see that as relative strength, and would you buy it despite any weakness, any exceptions? So, okay, the exceptions here are, yes, I would buy it depending the group that it's in, right? Let's just say gold was just breaking out of its base and the SPY and the Qs were coming down. Well, if I'm buying a gold miner, then yes, I'm buying that stock because it's unrelated to the S&P 500 or the QQQ. But if it's a tech name and the QQQ is going down, I notice the relative strength, but I don't trade it. I wait till the QQQ starts acting better. Then I trade the stocks that are undergoing accumulation within that space, or meaning the stocks whose relative strength line are going up. Because what happens if the QQQ has a second down day, and a third down day, and a fourth down day? It doesn't have to be by much, but all of a sudden now a 2.5% pullback, 3% pullback, 4% pullback, and the stock that you thought was showing relative strength likely also gets sold into because it's correlated, right? So I always prefer to wait for the market to begin to turn up, and then I buy the stocks that were showing relative strength. At least I try to buy the stocks that were showing relative strength. So hopefully that makes sense. Open Door above yesterday's highs. I bought Open Door back through what I thought was the pivot. There was this little pivot going through here, and, I thought it was good. I missed it on this day here. So I initially bought this thing on this day, and then it just closed weak, so I let it go. And then, I kind of missed this spot, or really right down in here. And then I ended up buying this thing as it was turning back up right here. It looks good. Open is one of those names. Whoops. Open is one of those names that is holding in there really well. I couldn't tell you why, but it might try to squeeze higher for all I know. Do I mind making my live stream 1080p? That would have to be with StreamYard. I don't know how the hell I do that. At least not today. I'll have to try and figure that out for later, brother. Camera resolution. I think I might just have to get a better camera. Maybe. Thoughts on AOI and Poet? Poet, we talked about the day before, and, I didn't know if it was going to be a good enough name within the semi-space to own. AOI continues to be choppy. Pullbacks against ascending moving averages are where I'd look. Poet, I didn't know would be, that great in the semi sector, but obviously that was a hell of a move. I mean, and it's gapping up some more. It went to 9:30 and after hours. Wow. Another $1.50. I mean, if you kind of sat there through this offering, oof. These kind of suck, but maybe set your stop loss at break even and live with the results, unfortunately. Yeah, PFE is interesting if the XLV continues to turn up. What do I think of App Love? It needs to tighten up. So I see this big volatility, and this isn't the kind of action I want my stocks going through. I want my stocks coming out of a tight area. LRCX was getting its ass kicked yesterday. Yeah, you got to understand, there's nothing tight about this setup. Look at the move it just made. Don't you want to catch a move like this? Of course you do. Well, what needs to happen after a move like this, right? It needs to go sideways for a while, right? Look at other periods on LRCX where it just goes straight up for a while, right? Then it needs to go sideways for a while. And then what happens? It tries to break out again after a nice little period of sideways, and then doesn't really go that much higher, right? I'm not saying that LRCX is done going down, but the stock needs to build sideways. They go up, they go sideways, they go up, right? And then they go sideways. See how this works? Right? And then they go up, and then a little brief sideways. Then they go up. What do you think it needs? Right? That's how stocks move. So it's like, how does it look to me? I'm not a buyer of the first pullback. So like when I see you say it may bounce at the 10, yeah, but why do you even care for it up here? Right? Like, where is the setup? You're just going to play for it for a bounce back to all-time highs into 170, 180 as if that would be healthy. That's not healthy at all. Right? So you're basically looking for setups that that wouldn't be healthy whatsoever. Yeah, CRDO, maybe a bounce at the 50. Maybe. I mean, technically it did yesterday. Does that end up holding? Maybe. Although it did look like on the daily a bit of a bear flag, which I talked about, in the room. I said, well, it's gone down, it's tightened up. So two options. We either reclaim the 20 simple moving average and then eventually build a higher low, or we break out of this channel and it's a bear flag and we at least go test the 50. So the second thing happened. We broke out of the bear flag and we went to go test the 50. Do we break the 50 and go lower? I don't know. It's obviously done a nice job finding support at the 50. The problem here in this current moment is that you always have to take into account where the market has come from. The market's gone up already quite a bit, and at any moment the market could start to pull back, not end its bull run, but start to pull back 1%, another 1%. Over the course of 10 days you might be down 4, 5, 6%. You just don't know. And all of these stocks are going to get their asses kicked. So just be careful buying stocks when, especially tech names, when the QQQ maybe starts to pull. But for now, everything looks fine. I still think pullbacks to ascending moving averages are the spots to look at. But yeah, I'm a little bit more on the cautious side on packing on a ton of new exposure, especially quickly. UEC, nice flag. Let's see. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. CCJ kind of a little sloppy. But yeah. Really, there's only two ways I like to short stocks. One is into flattening and declining moving averages. Well, I also like breaks of key moving averages, like MSTR yesterday. The break of the 200 simple moving average was like a really textbook short. I just didn't take it. I also like shorting first red day on something that's kind of gone a little bit parabolic, like SNDK or even some of these quantum names, right? But I'm not sure if they got to give a blow off move first, or like we haven't seen a true blow off top move since MSTR in November of 24. So
I haven't seen volume coming into CETY posted these days. Secures LOI for multiple battery energy storage projects in New York.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if like some of these names need to give a parabolic, blow off top move and then, they'll fail. But we haven't seen one in a while. Most stocks are just kind of giving rounding tops and then they roll over. So no, actually my my webcam was gifted to me. So I've never really had anybody tell me that it looks terrible, but now that somebody tells me, we'll have to go get another. Am I selling any of this Rocket Lab into this pre-market gap up? I'll tell you right now, I don't believe I am though. And part of the reason is we're just not extended enough. Well, we're 6.7 times its ATR from the 50. So, maybe if we get back to 67, 68 bucks, I would trim off another little piece. Yeah, we're about 38% roughly away from the 50 simple moving average. So maybe we'll see. I almost rather just sit in it because like I think, Rocket Lab could be a $80 billion market cap, which means they could still, double from here. STRL. Let's take a look. Thought STRL looked really good on 910. Yeah, it doesn't look bad, but maybe a bigger base would be good. Lyft looks even a little bit more explosive than Uber, but I kind of talked about Lyft being a bit extended from the 50 like a handful of days ago, right in here, and that's the reason I wasn't going to buy it. And at this point, I'm not sure. I need to see a better setup. I just don't see anything. Right? I like how it's tightening up here, but I just don't see a setup yet that I would buy. Like I wouldn't really buy a 20 simple moving average undercut and rally. It's not good enough. Yeah, Estee Lauder and Elf, I think, are, looking pretty decent. Yeah, they're looking pretty good. I didn't think that they'd be going, but they're even gapping up. I don't know that AVGO needs a whole lot longer. If it's going to start to work, it's going to start to find some support at this rising 50 and get going here pretty soon. Yeah, I think SOUN is definitely interesting. It's been kind of working itself up the right-hand side of this base. And we've seen this kind of movie before down here, where you make that big move, you base, you start to work yourself off the right-hand side. And Snowflake, it's just a touch slow. 241 will be a good, interesting spot to see it reclaim. Yeah, I don't trade biotechs for that exact reason. Too many biotechs just get, if you don't know like PDUFA dates, if you don't know like drug trial dates, if you don't know how much cash they have on hand, if you don't, like, I don't want to have to deal with that stuff. Right? I don't want to have to deal with it. Next thing you know, you wake up and your stock's down 60%. No thanks. I don't trade options. There's no need for me to trade options. I don't need more leverage. SoFi, I thought it was good the day before yesterday as it bounced off the 50 simple moving average. Nice continuation yesterday and nice small little gap up this morning. SoFi looks good. I don't know that I would chase it up here. Your entry was either yesterday or the day before. You had 2 spots to get in. No, I'm not necessarily waiting on earnings. There are a few stocks that, might have setups to add to before their earnings, but when we get to earnings, that might be an opportunity to finally start to get more exposure back on, depending how the market and individual stocks are acting to their earnings. And it's right around the corner. Yeah, Jumi is fine. Could just be a high type flag. Not sure what to make of that one, but choose under 50%. Under 50%. Can I take a look at the daily and weekly of Zeta? Doesn't look that special yet. The 200-day is still downtrending. I like that it gapped up on earnings and it's just been kind of basing above the 200, but would need to see a little bit more momentum come into this name. And 2023 looks like a pretty good spot that it's got to start to live over. Yeah, BMNR is interesting. BMNR is interesting. What's the problem with BMNR? Ethereum. Ethereum's crowded. Now, does Ethereum continue to break 5,000? If that happens, it's probably likely that we break, the top of this resistance gap. We'll see what happens there. What's the closing price here? 66.72. Yeah, you got shaken out of UEC 3 times. That's because it doesn't have explosive action up here, right? Where's the setup? It was never tight up here. It's just starting to tighten up, but before this, if you were buying this up here, there's no setup there. That's not a long enough consolidation after this big move. You want to know your entry? Your entry was down here when it reclaimed the 200 and started to break out of this flat pivot. $7 looked great. Webcam looks fine when I'm streaming on YouTube, so it's an X issue. Well, sucks to be on X, I guess. Yeah, GEV, a reclaim of the 50-day will be interesting. Yeah, this thing has made a big move and now digesting really well. Yeah, reclaim of the 50-day I think would be sweet. I don't know if AOI is a fail. as much as this is just a widowmaker like TEM. Like it just chops around. Like this here looked like a fail too, and then it just keeps chopping around, and here looked like a fail as well, and then it just bounced right back. So it's just one of those stocks where it looks like a bunch of fails. Poet could be interesting as a high volume close setup. So yesterday's close, I think we're gapping above that level. Serve Robotics, I don't know that I like this one nearly as much as I like SYM. Unfortunately, speaking of shakeouts, this one shook me out, and I was in at like 50 and a half bucks on this day. Shook me out right here. How terrible. And then another good entry, 10-1. Shame. What do I think about BBAI? I thought you said Baba. No, I'd rather trade Palantir for now until this isn't a better established uptrend. But, I could see a big base here. Maybe it's interesting when it takes out 780s again. Yeah, Oscar's already starting to kind of look like a leader a little bit, plus a super massive base. I remember Oscar down here, how nice this thing looked. But Oscar got really sloppy, built a whole new big base, and then even right here, I thought it started to look a little bit better. But, we'll see. It's got to tighten up again for me to be interested. Maybe a big flat base breakout. Yeah, nice job on EL. Wayfair. Yeah, this is another one of those. Is it buyable at the 50, or does the market start to weaken and then we start to lose the 50 on a bunch of these names? I don't know. Yeah, MP starting to look pretty good too. So another new big base is being built up here, multi-months of sideways after a really big move up. That's how stocks are supposed to move, and we're holding the 50. No real complaints. You're down to your final third on Joby. Now it's gapping down your entry. What do I know? I normally just get out. Right? If you're down to a third, and your stop was break even, I really try not to argue with that. I just get out. Plug entered into a warrant inducement agreement with investor exercise. This thing's already been in a big move. APLS. Whoops. Nah. No. It's like too random, right? It's like just getting going. Like you could wait for this thing much higher, and it would probably look like a better setup if it's actually in an established uptrend. This is an established uptrend. I don't know a whole lot about this name, but looks like it trades a little thin and not the fastest, but recent IPO. Interesting. I don't know enough about them. BTSG. This thing had a big base. This thing was good back in September. Yeah, it doesn't look bad. Don't know that it looks all that amazing, like a must own. I don't know enough about this name, but recent IPOs they can always continue for a whole lot longer. No, I don't understand options enough to trade them, right? And I don't really like to do things I don't understand. That's the problem. I focus so much on what I do. I don't really step out of, my comfort zone too much because I make money doing what I'm doing. So, trading options just for the sake of trading options, it doesn't really attract me. HMY, is this a silver name, gold name? Harmony? Is this Harmony Gold? It's fine, but it's a little bit of a laggard compared to the others. I thought maybe your entry was this big, pickup in volume this day. don't know that I love the setup here, but it looks okay. I've talked about UEC plenty. I don't really love it so much, the setup at least, but it's fine. It's not great. It's not terrible. You could use some more time in a new base. You triple this quickly or you double that quickly, you could use a new base. But I mean, it looks fine. Could just play out as a high type flag, but there's obviously some supply right around 18 and a half. You could use FinViz, you can use Market Surge, you can use Deep View, you can use investing.com probably, you can use, I mean, there's like a million. You could Google it, you could Perplexity it, you can open AI it. I mean, depends if you've trimmed it or not. Would I keep Joby if you bought it on October 2nd? I mean, you're basically flat now. Yeah, I don't buy stocks more than 4 times their ATR from the 50. And at 7 times its ATR from the 50, roughly what Rocket Lab is now, I think about trimming a little bit more. And then every ATR above 7, I trim some more. Does it look good coming into the 200 on Rocket? What's the one negative? What's the negative on Rocket? Look at the volume that's coming in here on the downside. Clearly, someone's selling the shit out of it, right? Do you really want to get in the way of that? Or do you just want to wait for price to tighten up? Or are you really trying to catch the bottom when there's clearly people selling the hell out of it, right? You shouldn't really want to try and catch the bottom when the people who move stocks are getting the hell out. Maybe it bottoms right at the 200. Maybe it bottoms in it at the 150. Like nobody knows, right? But I personally would just wait for it to be reaccumulated, build a whole new base so that this volume, looks negligible in time. But you're going to look at this thing and you're going to be like, what the hell happened here? Who was dumping it? Who was getting rid of it? Right? That's not the scenario that you want when somebody's dumping the hell out of it. And then you're in there looking for the bottom. You should just forget about that stock altogether, at least for now. Well, Strata, I can't do private one-on-ones. So this is like a really good alternative to helping people out in the mornings and helping people get prepared for the open. As it relates to me still sitting at my desk during the workday, yeah, that's another great way for me to help people out. But I can only answer the same question so many times, and I can only give my attention to so many people. So kind of having a room where it's full of students that are more so serious about their education. Part of the problem is if you just open it up to the public, then you end up with a bunch of people in there who don't take their jobs very seriously. Some say they would, but you just still end up with trolls in there, right? Trolls don't pay to be in a room, right? Serious students pay to be in a room. So it's like when you kind of do that, it eliminates some of the trolls. But if you just, I don't mind trolls here in the morning for the first hour of my day, but definitely not during my trading day. I can only stand answering the same questions as well so many times. And typically the students in the room, they've already heard me repeat stuff that, I don't really get those same questions. I can't blame people in here for asking the same questions because I don't know who's new every day, right? Some days a new person will show up and we'll have a similar question as one I might have answered yesterday. But like the students in the room, they've heard me say it already, and I might already have a video on it in the room, or they might have heard me talk about it on last night's watch list video. So, it's like two totally different environments. But I'm normally at my desk anyway, about an hour before the open, even before I was doing these live streams. Which setup in my playbook has the highest expected value and returns the most R? Great question, Think. And I'll be talking about that more this weekend. I think the setup that has the highest expected value for me is a simple flat base breakout, because everybody can also see the setup, which means more people are likely to buy that setup. And returns the most R. See, the problem is we don't know what a stock will end up returning if you end up buying a really nice high type flag. Sometimes the best R returns are on undercut and rallies, because they do have some of the lowest, risk. Your stop is so tight, but maybe are also a little bit more failure prone versus just a simple flat base breakout in a good market, in a good group. So great question. There's multiple setups that I really, really like, but I would say a flat base breakout is like the easiest to learn, and has some of the best expected value, especially if you're dealing with stocks that are in a good group. And if they've got a flat base, that just means have been undergoing accumulation, which is really good. No, AVA is the stock that had gotten its ass kicked, right? AVEA. Oh, looks like Thinkorswim's being slow this morning. Am I interested in Circle? Yeah, Circle definitely looks interesting. We'll see if a crypto kind of shapes up. I know this will kind of move with the crypto-related names as well as Coinbase. I'll look at AEVA in a moment whenever Thinkorswim decides to stop acting up. Kind of dealt with the same problem yesterday. Do I only buy when a stock is near a daily moving average? How about if it's extended from? No, see, that's the thing. Would you just scalp it if you want? See, that's the thing. I don't want to scalp stocks. So I just ignore them. Now, could I buy a pullback to a 20-day? Yes, I could. But if it's extended from the 20, there's a lot of stocks that are extended from the 20 right now. Like, some of the quantum stocks. Am I out there just scalping them if I wanted? Yeah, if I wanted, I could, but I don't want to. So leave it to Thinkorswim to act very slow this morning. Same exact thing yesterday. Who else had issues yesterday? Anybody? As gold advances and Bitcoin retreats, how would you stock individual names? You mean in the gold space? I wouldn't, right? The best gold names have already taken off, and they had really, really clean, solid bases weeks and months ago. As it relates to the Bitcoin names, are there really any Bitcoin names anymore? Not really. It's MSTR. Or maybe Coin. All the other names like Iron and Hut and Bitfarms and CleanSpark and Hive, they're all like data center plays because they've got access to tons of power. They're not really crypto related names. Yeah, Snow is definitely interesting. I kind of would like it either on pullbacks to the ascending, moving averages, or a break of the high volume close on the earnings day. I think that's 241. Palantir, very simple setup. Over 190 bucks looks great. I'd love to look at Circle here, but Thinkorswim decided it's not going to work anymore. Back-to-back days, such a slow program. But you know what we can do? Let me see if I can do this. Oh, here we go. About time. Yeah, Circle's looking a whole lot better. Super subtle gap up this morning. Palantir, I think, looks pretty dang good. Really over yesterday's highs and then over 190 are two spots that I'd kind of take a peek at. Well, I had MP near the 50-day way back here. And then I trimmed some off on 925 and I cut the rest on 926. I tried to get re-involved with it on this day and I got stopped out at lows of the day. And then it, just ripped right back. I mean, it looks good. It doesn't look like it's trying to go away. All it's done is build a whole new base. I mean, could it be ready to go in a couple days? Yeah, maybe. I would look to get involved, on little checkbacks into the time. I mean, this thing is very tight. Problem is that buying strength on this thing has just gotten sold off recently. So you almost want to buy the weakness. Is MMM too slow of a mover? Is that literally 3M? Yeah, this is way too slow. No, guys, I don't sell or call. I don't do call options. I don't sell options. I don't buy options. I don't write puts. I don't do none of that. I avoid options altogether. I don't really understand them well enough to do it. If I understood them a little bit better, maybe I would do it, but I don't put any of my effort into trying to learn them. So no options for me. Celsius, yeah, it's not in the strongest group. But this thing's been acting a whole lot better. I would assume pullbacks on this thing probably continue to get bought. Nothing. If I were you, you're not forced to trade options because of an account size issue. An account size issue just means that maybe you want to trade names that are a little bit faster. So like you still want to trade Tesla, but you don't buy Tesla, you buy TSLL, right? Like the world has made it so that every person can have a triple leveraged ETF attached to their favorite stock. All right. So don't worry about that. But if you want options based on account size, then you just want even more leverage on something that's very difficult to do, which is trade options. No, you know what? I didn't like the way Dave's acting at all. I don't really see a potential buy on Dave. At the very least, he needs to start to reclaim the 50-day. Yeah, and you're not forced to trade small and mid caps. Tesla's not a small cap. And again, you're given TSLL. You had a really, really nice setup on IONQ in the 40s. You could have bought IONX, right? Like this was a textbook setup on IONQ right here, as nice as it got. Right, there's your entry on 9.9. Well, guess what? If you bought IONX, you didn't need options for this. You got absolutely paid. This thing goes from $60 to what, 207? I mean, even if you don't hold through this pullback, you end up catching almost a 200% move. You bought ARC September 11, sold a third yesterday. Oh, very nice. You did a much better job than I did. I bought it on 9.9, and then I shook myself out of those ads on 9.17 on FOMC day. But I still have my stock from 6.6. So I'm still sitting there, and I didn't trim any yesterday. Thoughts on QURE? Yeah, I don't know what this going on here, but apparently the news was pretty good. Big base down here. I think it probably go a whole lot further than we think too. Yeah, I don't know that I would be a buyer of it, but it looks interesting. The problem with this thing is you're liable to catch an offering. I don't really like biotechs. Cypher needs a new base. It's just I feel the same way about Cypher as I do about Hut and Riot and Iron and all the others. Just too extended from the 50. Like, where were you down here? $6. After this thing had massive accumulation come in. So my thoughts is just that it's too extended here. Could it keep going higher? Yes. Am I a buyer of this kind of setup? No. Could you be a buyer of this kind of setup? Sure. I just don't see what that setup is. Apple does look tight. Apple looks like a super clean high type flag that probably goes to break all-time highs here pretty soon. What groups am I currently watching? Well, obviously the ones that are most going up. So gold, silver, crypto, clean energy, solars, nuclear, quantum, data centers. There's a lot of groups that are acting well, aerospace and defense in particular. So a lot of stocks and groups acting really well. How many of them are buyable at this point? Like gold and silver are extended. Aerospace and defense is quite a bit out there. Utilities just started to break out. Nuclear and quantum are pretty much gone and extended. The data center stocks that used to be crypto related are pretty much gone. That's why we just need new bases. Thoughts on Boeing? Needs to reclaim the 50-day at the very least. 224.50s. I don't know that I love it, but 224.50s. Yeah, Hims is taking punches like a champ. Hims, it's one of those where it's been hit with so much bad news and this thing refuses to die. I think this thing is trying to go higher, to be quite honest with you. It feels like it's trying to go higher. Checkbacks into all ascending moving averages continue to be bought, continues to build higher lows. Yeah, Hims is acting fantastic. Yeah, breakouts have been tough. Not all breakouts have stopped working because, Rocket Lab I started to buy it wasn't your traditional breakout, like your flat base, around 54, 55. But I was looking to get myself involved down here as close to the moving averages as possible. And it's worked really well. So breakouts have continued to work. They've been more and more selective. ARM looks better to me than Qualcomm. ARM has a huge base. I don't see myself buying this thing up here, but 10-1 looked pretty interesting. And then we'll just see if this thing can continue to build, a higher low going into this, 166, 170 level, and then, maybe off to the races. Do I trade intraday in the group no, I don't intentionally trade intraday. The only time I trade intraday intentionally is one, if there's an insane opportunity, or two is if I got to stop myself out of a long that I just took or a short that I just took. But I don't intentionally day trade. There's no reason for me to trading intraday doesn't move the needle on the portfolio. So you'll be in that situation in a couple years. You'll come to that realization as well too. Day trading is fine, but I don't want to have to come up with a bright idea every single day of my life just to make a couple bucks. Yeah, I thought Lemonade was like the most talked about stock yesterday, and it just shook people out. I don't know that I love this name, but it looks okay. I just don't see a setup on it. If you're buying these pullbacks near the 50-day, then fine. FMST. No interest. Why would I have interest in a stock that trades 1.6 million bucks? I've got a bigger position in Tesla, right? Why would I trade a stock that I can't even get my full size in? I mean, what am I supposed to buy here? 100 grand worth, right? It's not going to move the needle in the account. So that's why I always talk about make sure you're sticking to stocks that are liquid, and even if you had a teeny tiny account, 10 grand, I still wouldn't trade this. Why would you trade a stock that trades $1.6 million? Like who is trading this exactly? Nobody. That's the answer. Nobody, right? The whole 8 people are trading this. Yeah, Herbert, that's a good answer. Yeah, I know there are guys in the group who do trade intraday, but there's a place for them to share if they wanted to share day trading ideas. But they're there to learn and focus on swing trading. Now that doesn't mean that they can't focus on what they're doing. Swing trading, take your position, and then focus on other stuff that might get some breaking news and day trade it. I think that's fine too. So thanks for chiming in, Herbert. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I was literally pounding on the table that I'm not getting rid of my Rocket Lab. I know everybody was watching it kind of dump yesterday, and I just kept saying there's no reason for me to get rid of it. There's no reason for me to get rid of it on this pullback. And then, again, you kind of got to put yourself in position to get lucky, but you put yourself in that position by just following your rules. NXST. A little slow, I think. Moves 2.6% per day and then only trades 70 million bucks. I don't know that I love it. How will I short quantum? Into an extension and then add once it's working. Yeah, I think a flat base breakout normally has a few touches before it goes, and flat base breakouts come in many shapes and sizes, right? You've got an arc type of flat base breakout. Here's one. You've got a flat base breakout like MU in here. You've got a flat base breakout like Tesla, right in here. You've also got a flat base breakout in an NVIDIA way back here. Right, so they come in all shapes and sizes. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do this. I don't know if that's like on the main page when you're logging in. Undercut on Oracle. I don't know. That news yesterday obviously seemed like it kind of sucked, but yeah, I want to see price action tighten up a little bit. But I said this about Oracle. You get this day two action, and that kind of signals that this stock is going to need a whole lot more time. I think I even said it on day one. You get this big gap up, you get this huge pickup in volume. Normally, that's not the beginning of a move. It's the end of one that needs a few months of basing. So far, that's been the right thinking. Not all dips to the 20-day are buyable. So just good to remember that. Not all dips to the 20 are buyable. Yeah, Rambus, another semi name. These semis just aren't going away. Yeah, we'll see. A little bit of a longer consolidation, but yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Fig's interesting. Fig's interesting. Just needs to shape up. Don't know that I love it just yet, but young IPO. I don't see the setup on it. Same with Circle. I don't see the setup on it just yet, but it's coming around. Same with CoreWeave, right? Some of these names just aren't really going anywhere. How much capital should someone have before transitioning to full-time trading? How much you need to live, right? If you need $100,000 a year to live, then you probably need, a couple $100,000 a year to trade at the very least. Do I ever think about switching charting platforms? Yes. But I've grown so accustomed to Thinkorswim over the last 5 years. Do I ever find setting my stops at low of day to be very risky, as essentially we are timing the bottom on a stock? No, I do not. Because if I'm buying a breakout, right, I expect my horse to take off from my entry level because I'm looking at the proper pivot. It's in a healthy market. It's in an established uptrend. There's volume coming in. And then I'm setting my stop at low of day because the best horses don't return to their starting gate. So I'm not trying to time the bottom at all. I'm trying to buy a breakout, and breakouts are supposed to be just that, breaking out. Guys, sorry I could not answer the rest of your guys' questions. I just realized 8:25. I got to get going. I appreciate you guys all, as always, for being here. I am on tomorrow. I am not on Friday. I travel on Thursday to New Hampshire. I will see you guys tomorrow and then back on Monday. Hopefully you guys have an awesome trading day today, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Cheers.